For my individual presentation topic, I chose navicular syndrome, or navicular disease found in horses. I started going to rodeos and play days at a very young age. Over the years, I've had different horses. This picture you see here is a horse named Rocket. I got him at the end of my junior year of high school, and we got along great. At the beginning, we were a great team. We started winning barrel racings right off the bat. We won every round and the average at the Oklahoma Youth Rodeo Association finals that year. And after having him for about a year, he tore a ligament, and so I had to lay off of him for about 6 months. Once those 6 months were over, I started exercising him again and started competing on him, and he felt right to me, but after I would run him, he would have a slight limp, so I knew something wasn't right. So we took him back to the vet, and that day he was diagnosed with the early stages of navicular disease. Since this experience, I have tried to keep up with navicular disease, navicular syndrome, and tried to keep up with the current treatments and then the possible cures for this disease. So my proposed question for my research is, what are the current and effective ways to diagnose and treat navicular syndrome in horses? Many of you may be wondering, what is navicular disease or navicular syndrome, or what is the difference, or just what is navicular if you're not very familiar with horses. Navicular syndrome, it includes problems within the whole area where the navicular bone is. And the navicular disease is just the navicular bone. It's the inflammation and deterioration of the navicular bone. The navicular bone acts kind of like the cushiony soles of tennis shoes. It absorbs the pounding from the horse being active, and it's a very small bone, and it's located in the heel, and so it can get very sore. This next slide will show you a picture of it. This is a picture of a horse's hoof. I don't think you can see that, but right here there is a picture of the navicular bone, and it is labeled. It's actually the smallest bone that's labeled there in the foot, and it's in a location where it takes lots of pounding, lots of stress from horses, especially horses that are performance horses. So you see navicular disease a lot in quarter horses. They have small feet and large bodies and a lot of weight, so those horses, quarter horses and thoroughbreds, are more likely to get this disease. There are different ways that horses get navicular disease. The exact cause of navicular disease is not known. Usually it's a combination of different things. The first thing could be lack of exercise, also poor genetics, lack of nutrition, poor conformation, confinement in stalls or small corrals, being raised in very humid or sandy conditions also contributes to this disease. Horses that are ridden on extremely hard ground, especially at a young age, are more likely to develop this disease. Next are some pictures of horses that have navicular syndrome. These horses have extremely long toes, as you can see here, and their heels are underslung, as veterinarians call them. The horse's heel is almost touching the ground, and you want a horse's hoof to sit up off the ground. This next picture is an x-ray, and it shows how this heel is almost on the ground, and then there's a line here. I don't know if you can see it, but the hoof should be trimmed back to about right there, so all of this is excess toe that's growing there. The other picture is just how veterinarians take radiographs of horses when they are looking for something abnormal in the foot. This next slide is how they've always diagnosed navicular disease, usually with a physical examination or radiographs, usually a combination of both, but through my research I found some new ways that they are diagnosing this disease, which we will talk about in a little bit. This is a paper I wanted to include. I know you can't see that, but I'm going to read some of it. It is when we took my horse to the vet and he was diagnosed with navicular disease. It was just interesting to me because many of the things that are on this paper are stuff that I found in my research. He put on here corrective shoeing, and he has 5 objectives here that he wants my farrier to meet. he put exercise, medications, and alternative therapies along with a case summary, and he went through it just almost textbook to what I found in my research, which I thought was very interesting. The new methods that I was talking about earlier are MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, lameness locator, and the wireless inertial sensor system. The MRI is by far the most popular, and it's being used a lot more here lately than the radiographs. It is so much better because they can see the soft tissue inside the horse's foot, which you could not see with x-rays. And it's a little costly. In my research, I found it was $1,600 in and out the door, which is a little high, but the research also showed that you are more likely to get your results right then that day with MRI, and with other things such as x-rays, they could be right, they could be wrong. Some x-rays show real bad navicular bones, and then when you examine them, walking, trotting, without any medication, they're perfectly fine, so they're not always reliable, but the MRI seem to be very, very promising and are becoming very popular in the horse industry. The lameness locator and the wireless inertial sensor system are both very, very new. Actually, one of them was just came out in 2013. They are both electronical devices, and they both end up being hooked up to a computer, and that's kind of how you get your results. But there's not many success stories on them just because they haven't been around very long. But I do see both of those systems being used in the future. When you talk about treatment options for navicular, there is no one single treatment for a horse with this disease. There's usually a combination of different things people do to treat or to manage a horse with this disease. You usually will use wedge or egg bar shoes along with pads, so your veterinarian and your farrier need to get together to do the best on your horse's feet. It's correct shoeing is a lot of the problem, and I've seen horses with navicular be shoed correctly, and you won't even know they have this disease. Once horses get older and their disease gets worse, you're going to have to start adding some more medications to ease the pain, along with the proper shoeing and sometimes other injections into the coffin bone. This next slide shows the egg bar shoes, the pads, and the wedge shoes that I just mentioned. Right here, the bottom two pictures are the egg bar shoes, and they go all the way around the foot so the heel never touches the ground. This top picture is the pad, which also cushions the bottom of the foot and helps the navicular bone cushion the whole foot, so there's not as much stress on it. Over on the other corner is the wedge shoe. That's actually what we use on my horse Rocket. The newest treatments that have come out in the last 2 or 3 years to treat this disease are Tildren. This is a drug that is actually licensed in Europe, and it's used on women with osteoporosis, so it promotes the bone growth. It has to be, your veterinarian that you use has to call for this drug because it's actually an emergency drug, so you can only get it if it is needed for your horse. The next is the isosapurine. It's not as popular, and I know that it's not getting used as much as the Tildren. The Tildren's more popular than it now, but the isopurine increases the bone circulation, and it's not as expensive, and it's a safe drug, so those are some good things with it, but it is banned by the American Horse Association, so that's not a good thing. You definitely want to remember that if you're using this drug. Stem cells and IRAP, interleukin receptor antagonist protein, are two new things they're doing. There's not much research on them yet, but they are trying to figure out if these types of things will help horses with navicular disease. Core depression gelling is another treatment option that I found very interesting. It's where they go in and they drill some tiny holes in the navicular bone to relieve the pressure from the fluid. They are actually doing this on humans, and a veterinarian from Missouri decided to apply it to horses. They've only done 5 horses, and out of those 5, 1 ended up being lame within 6 months, but the other 4 were not. So there's some hope there, but like I said, there's only been 5 horses that have had this done, so there's still a lot of research and a lot of experimentation to go along with that. The last resort for a horse with navicular disease is a neurectomy. This is where they go in and they sever the nerves to the navicular bone so the horse cannot feel pain. But you don't want to do this because a lot of horses will end up stumbling or falling. And especially if you have children on the horses, you don't want to see a child fall on a horse. It's just a disaster. So this is a last resort. This is more like if you're going to retire the horse and put him out in the pasture just to relieve his pain, you can do this. After researching all of these different treatments and the different ways to identify this disease, I have made my own hypothesis or prediction. I think that there will be a cure for this disease in the next 20 years. I've seen a lot of improvements and in the diagnosing and the treatment of horses over the past few years, let alone. It's critical to catch a horse in the early stages of this disease if you want to get it treated properly. Many horses, when are treated correctly, they can go back to their normal lives. So just remember that this is not a terminal disease, and horses can go back to their normal lives if you will manage this disease. Thanks.